Well, I got a good story about Dick Yuengling. When we went up to Yuengling the first time, I was kind of blown away that like we were going to get to do this interview with Dick Yuengling in the first place. So we go into Yuengling, we do this great interview with Dick, and he shows us all around the place, and we had beers right off the line, and I tell people it's like the best Yuengling I've ever had, and people are like, yeah, that's because it was before it was pasteurized. So like it's like it tastes amazing. We're all hyped up about this. We get back, and one of my guys calls me up, and he's like, hey, the camera you were shooting on, do you still have the card on that? Did you switch cards or something?
Oh, no.
Because the card that's in there doesn't have anything on it. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So I had nothing, and my camera had the audio on it too, so like we had nothing. I mean, we had B-roll and stuff, but we didn't have his interview. And so I said to the one woman that on our team that was doing the producing, I said, here's the situation. Do you mind talking to them and just see if there's anything we can do? And Dick said, come on back. I'd love to have you again. So I'm like, tail between my legs, walking up. And I don't know if you've ever been to Yuengling, but it's got that visitor center across with these gigantic doors. And so we show up before they open, and I'm like knocking like, I'm at the Wizard of Oz there on these gigantic doors, and it swings open, and there's Dick. He's like, you guys look familiar. Welcome back. And I'm like, oh my gosh. He just like was so great. Gave us another killer interview. Was so gracious to us.
Welcome back to the BrewedAt podcast. I'm your host, Richie Tevlin, joined as always by Evan Blum. And this week we welcome on the co-owner of GK Visual, who runs, I guess, Port and PA,
That's
Nate
correct,
Kresge.
yeah. Good job on the name.
Thank you.
Appreciate the practice.
Couple practice.
Yeah, good job.
Guys. So I guess if you're not familiar with what Port and PA is, it's just kind of a documentary, longer format production, I guess, of documenting breweries in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I can give you my elevator pitch on
let's
that.
hear it.
So Port and PA started out. Actually, I'll even rewind before that. We started out doing a small documentary on the Harrisburg breweries called Brewed in the Berg. I'm not even sure if you can even find that anymore. It may still float on YouTube. I'm not sure.
YouTube.
Okay. And then Port and PA came out of that. We're like, well, we told the story here of Harrisburg. What's the bigger picture? And so we kind of ventured out and did the whole state. And that came out in 2018. And that wasn't so much saying like, here's how beer is brewed. This was telling more of the story of the people behind the beer in Pennsylvania. And I still like that motto for what we do. We've continued that story on into a series on YouTube called Port and PA. Very original, going from Port, Pennsylvania to Port and PA. But there's over 50 episodes up on YouTube, and they all kind of tell the story behind the beer. And it's not so much like, here's our new IPA, here's our new brewing system. This is more about the people who make the beer and why they do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's very similar to kind of what we're doing. It's just what you guys are kind of on site, and it's getting kind of in touch with like their actual tap room. So I guess almost like a combination of what we're doing here and what you guys are doing over at BrewedAt. But it was that, I mean, you're the owner of GK Visual. Is GK Visual like always kind of based around craft beer, or like how did even the Brewed in the Berg originate?
Yeah, so that's a great question too. So GK Visual started in 2005, and so we're coming up almost on 20 years here with GK Visual, and that's mainly been promo, commercial videos, that type of thing. But we're always on the road, and so when we're staying in the middle of nowhere, the first thing we do is Google what's the closest brewery to us, because we know, and just like you guys, you walk in and you're sitting across the bar from probably the guy that made the beer or somebody that helped make the beer or knows a lot about the product that you're drinking, as opposed to some chain restaurant or something else.
Yeah, it's also a lot like kind of what the energy of that place is going to be. Like if you just best bar, it could be a nightclub or something else. It's
yeah, and you get a little local flavor too,
Definitely.
right? So it's not just the hotel bar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So since we were doing that already, and we love to tell stories, we decided, well, why not, if we're already on the road, stop into some of these places and start piecing together their stories. And it kind of blew up into this film that we decided to launch during Harrisburg Beer Week back when that was happening.
And GK Visuals based in Harrisburg?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So, but the story takes us all over the state and dives into the history of beer in Pennsylvania, from you guys here in Philly with the first lager, all the way across the state to Pittsburgh, Erie, and everywhere in between. So, and then after we did that, we didn't stop traveling, we didn't stop visiting breweries, and we noticed that they kept changing, and brewers that had been in the film now are at different places. And at one point we started like, well, do we re-edit the film? And there's a newer version, I think, at the end of the credits. It kind of gives little updates of where people are at.
It's like a time
but
capsule.
Even that is outdated too. So we're like, well, let's continue this as a series, and so that's what we did.
Back when you first started the filming of the breweries, did you have any homebrew experience, or did you just like beer and just kind of get?
No, we just like beer. I mean, we. I brewed one homebrew myself from a kit, so I don't even tell people that I did it on opening cans and dumping it in a recipe.
Yeah, so. But the buzzword, storytelling of kind of what you do and how you're selling, products. I guess you're creating these stories that are then you're creating into videos. I feel like a lot of craft breweries, it's not easy to do that, but it's a lot of craft breweries that start up, they're these mom and pop places. They're entrepreneurs that build up, and it's a very compelling story to tell. Mm-hmm. So it's a nice lane to kind of be in where you can share those stories. And as much as yes, they're all startup places, everybody does have their own stories.
Yeah, and it's funny how many are similar. It's the guy that's tired of his IT job, and he's like, man, I started homebrewing, and then one thing led to another, and here I am with my own brewery.
Yeah, step and one, Mr. Beer Kit.
Right, and so you have that side of it, and then you have the other side of it where somebody had a good business sense and saw that breweries were pretty popular and said, all right, I think I want to get into this, and then they hook up with a good brewer and start a business model with, you look at New Trail, right?
Yeah, New Trail.
In Williamsport, that was kind of their business model. I mean, they saw the market and saw what it was like, brought in a great brewer, and then just blew the thing up.
Yeah, they are on fire. It was two State College or Center County club owners that just Williamsport,
yep.
And they brought on Michael Rosa. It's unreal. They're can't be touched right now. But I guess starting even before Portland, PA, the Harrisburg beer scene. What was the Harrisburg beer scene like back then?
Yeah, so Appalachian Brewing was kind of my introduction to craft beer back in the day. I remember trying Appalachian Brewing after work. We'd go in, and I just was kind of it rocked me. I was not used to that much alcohol in a beer and that much flavor, and I just remember having the best time going up there. And I'll tell a quick story. They had a skee ball machine upstairs back in the day that was broken, and you could lift the tab and push the button, the skee balls would just keep coming out. So we would go up there and drink these beers and just have the best time playing skee ball all night long. And that was my introduction to a brewery. I'm like, breweries are awesome,
Yeah.
So and then of course we had Troegs in town. So Troegs back then was not where it is now. It's in Hershey now, but back then it was just around the corner from Appalachian Brewing. So we had those two. And so we had two really great breweries in town, and now they've started to pop up since then. But
I would say those are both different types of breweries as well.
Absolutely, yeah. But back then they weren't too different.
Okay.
In the sense that they were brewing kind of similar things. Appalachian Brewing's focus is more on taproom, restaurant type of thing. Troegs was pretty local. It wasn't what it is today. Yeah.
And so it was just those two breweries, or
It was pretty much, yeah. And now since then we have Zeroday right in town. Boneshire has a tap room in town. There's a vegan restaurant that has their own brewery called Vegetable Hunter. So they're popping up,
Cool. And then so that was Brewed in the Berg, and then what was the time on it? How?
Yeah, I think there was about 2 years between Brew and the Berg.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah.
You went from Troegs and Appalachian to then I mean, the film is you were interviewing everybody in the state. I think it starts off with Dick Yuengling.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, I got a good story about Dick Yuengling with that thing. So, you guys have the camera set up here. And when we went up to the Yuengling the first time, I was kind of blown away that, like, we were going to get to do this interview with Dick Yuengling in the first place. And, I mean, I went to college at Penn State, and so you're a Penn Stater too, yeah. So, like, the parties were, like, Keystone or Miller Lite, but if somebody had some money, they had Yuengling at the party. And so, like, Yuengling kind of held this, like, high place, being young. And then I went to school in Florida, and that was right around the same time Yuengling opened up in Florida, in Tampa. So Yuengling was everywhere down there too. So the Yuengling just held this like special place in my heart. And so we go into Yuengling. We do this great interview with Dick, and he shows us all around the place. And we had beers right off the line. And I tell people it's like the best Yuengling I've ever had. And people are like, yeah, that's because it was before it was pasteurized. So like it's like it tastes amazing. So we're all hyped up about this. We get back, and one of my guys calls me up, and he's like, hey, the camera you were shooting on, do you still have the card on that? Did you switch cards or something?
Oh, no.
Because the card that's in there doesn't have anything on it. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And it was a new camera to us. We had been shooting with multiple cameras, but the camera I was on was pretty new to us. And dumb setting on it, when you flip it on, if you hit record right away, it doesn't start recording, even though it says it is. So I had nothing. And my camera had the audio on it too, so like we had nothing. I mean, we had B-roll and stuff, but we didn't have his interview. And so I said to the one woman that on our team that was doing the producing, I said, could you, here's the situation. Do you mind talking to them and just see if there's anything we can do? And so her name's Sarah Bozich, and she reached out to Yuengling again. And Dick said, come on back. I'd love to have you again. So I'm like, tail between my legs, walking up. And I don't know if you've ever been to Yuengling, but it's got that visitor center across with these gigantic doors. And so we show up before they open. And I'm like knocking like, I'm at the Wizard of Oz there on these gigantic doors. And it swings open. And there's Dick. He's like, you guys look familiar. Welcome back. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. He just like was so great. Gave us another killer interview. Was so gracious to us, and I know a lot of people have some hate for Dick Yuengling here and there, but man, he couldn't have been better.
My parents did a tour up there a couple years ago, and he was talking to my mom in the tap room and didn't mention once that he was who he was, and
really?
my dad was just like, you were talking to, right? She's like,
he loves hanging out.
Nice old guy.
Yeah.
When you go up now, you see there's a cardboard cutout of him at least.
Yeah.
So both times I've been there, I've seen that. I haven't seen him yet. But.
Yeah, he floats around there. Or his daughters are usually around there, too.
That's cool.
Yeah, we have, is it Wendy, I think?
I think that's one of them.
Yeah, she's in the film, too. And
she runs it now, right?
Well, there's, three daughters that all run it and take different roles. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So how I guess... I mean, you guys did, work with the Brewers of Pennsylvania to kind of put that film together, and you said before that you guys got some grants from the PLCB. Like, how did that video come about? I mean, I'm sure it was like a much larger production. Was that just kind of like you guys got those grants beforehand, or you started working on it and like people saw what it was?
Yeah, we're dumb. So we went and did this stuff before we had funding in place, which I would never recommend to anybody. It should be completely the other way around.
Yeah.
So we put all that money out on our own, and then looked for funding options. Entered it into film festivals. We got jerked around there. We had a company say, oh, we're going to put you on Amazon and you guys are going to get all these royalties, blah, blah, blah. And like, so they did that and then like never gave us anything. They put out their own DVD. They changed our artwork and like,
oh my God,
jerked us around, never gave us a dime of it. And then so we owed them money for the new artwork. It was like,
oh my God.
I did everything wrong that you can do for that sort of thing. So, lesson learned. But then so we went after grants. The BOP has been great. The Brewers of Pennsylvania have been great. We've been working with them every time we need to like reach out to new breweries, or we actually do their social media now, which has been cool. Nice. So we have a great partnership with them. But yeah, there was a beer marketing grant program put out by the state. It's actually through the Department of Ag, but then the PLCB runs it. And there's actually, it's interesting, it's kind of gotten muddy, to be honest, and I'll kind of leave it at that. But it was a rough process for us with getting paid through that, and it's all a reimbursement grant. But they're trying to fix that system. And so right now, honestly, Port PA is kind of in a standstill just because we don't have funding, going after sponsors and other options there. But until that grant program gets fixed, we have like maybe 1 or 2 more episodes that we've shot that we're trying to put out. But beyond that, trying to figure out how we fund new episodes.
For sure. I think, it's great. And Brewers of Pennsylvania is like, if you're unaware, Brewers of Pennsylvania, kind of this lobbying group that helps all the breweries in Pennsylvania like come together and then, supports them. Yeah. But I feel like Port and PA is very, pragmatic documentary series where like you're showing people kind of like who people are individually, and it's something that, it fits exactly what Brewers of Pennsylvania wants. And like wants to showcase, these are entrepreneurial startups that you guys are showcasing, kind of showing these small businesses. Yeah,
and to their credit, we have a lot of people in the series that aren't members of the BOP.
Yeah.
Which, in my mind, it's kind of a no-brainer. If you're a member of the BOP, you get free legal advice, you get a say
and it's not
in
expensive.
legislation.
It's like $300 a year.
Yeah, especially at brewing and planning, like it's really cheap. If you're a bigger brewery, then obviously it's a larger cost to join, but the benefits are there, and they do a lot for the breweries, especially with working with the PLCB and legislation.
Yeah, it's I want to have them on eventually. Like I know, like Bill and Tom Kehoe, like all these people. Yeah. They're the ones paying the most money for it.
Down here, you got a lot of great BOP representatives for sure.
Yeah, they're the ones that put it together. But I guess like going into the film itself, like how like yes, storyteller, but like how what was like kind of the format of that? Like you're showing
we're kind of loose with that kind of a thing. We'll often, at least with the film, we would go talk to people and kind of see what the story was, and then kind of
that was my question.
That path.
It's just like, are you creating the story and then going to the brewery, or you're looking for things, or are you like talking to the people themselves and then kind of?
Yeah. So with the film, we knew we wanted to cover a little bit of the history, so we went out to Pittsburgh and talked to a gentleman, Joe, and he's working on creating a beer museum.
Cool.
So he was kind of our historian part of it. Lou Bryson is in the film. He's a big author in the beer industry.
Yeah, national beer writer.
Exactly, yeah. So he gave us a little bit of that flavor as well. So that was that kind of side of things. But then we wanted a little bit of a taste of all over the state. So we talked to bigger breweries. Went to talk to Tom at Yards, Bill, Victory, and obviously Dick Yuengling. But then we're talking to in the film, you guys just had Love City on not that long ago, and
the film was like there was literally a hole in the ground.
That's
correct. When they were
Yeah.
stuck in construction. It was just like you had yes, Love City and they're big. Kevin and Melissa are like people now, but when they were in the film, that was not.
Yeah, that
what
was
they are now.
the beginning. So it's kind of funny to walk in there, and every time I take somebody in there, they get sick of me because I'm like, right over there was where the big hole was that was in our film, So we tried to show all aspects of the state of brewing at that time, and I think we did a pretty good job. It's a timestamp, though. As soon as that film was out, things are changing, and you walk into Love City now, you'd never imagine what it used to be.
Yeah, we were talking about before, John Stenmore was that, then Free Will, and just all of these things now a blast from the past. Very funny.
Absolutely, yeah.
I like some of the structure that you guys had with it, going from the different phases, even into the raw materials piece, and what on the daily basis their problems are, and stuff like that. Just different perspective that you haven't really seen so far.
Yeah, we even, if you pay attention to the opening credits of the film, we're actually at American Keg, and they make kegs here in Pennsylvania.
Yep,
it's one of the few, in the United States that do that. So you're right. So raw materials, other ancillary industries that are involved with brewing, maltsters, you guys had Deer Creek not too far from here.
Yep.
So we try to hop growers, everything. Try to encapsulate the industry, because the industry, as as we know, it's not just the brewer, right? There's so many people that are involved in the process down to the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the film is it's an hour and a half long. Like there was a lot of different stories, and like even like Carol Stout, like people like that have like very compelling stories. Well, for you personally, like was there something that stood out? Like I'm sure you learned a lot like along the way just talking to these people.
Well, you raise a good point. You mentioned Carol Stout, and you're sitting talking to these legends of beer, not just in Pennsylvania.
I mean, the first female brewery owner in the country, I think.
That's correct. Yeah. So I mean, to sit there with Carol Stout and just like have a beer with her and drink Scarlet Lady, I mean, that was my jam. That was so cool. Dick Yuengling, Bill at Victory, like these are yards. These are breweries that I want to say kind of grew up on, in a sense. Even like the Troegs brothers now, like I consider them friends, and I can reach out to them and come on over, Nate, whatever you need, kind of a thing. And I'm like, wow, I get to go to Troegs and like just like somebody knows my name, kind of a thing.
Which, by the way, I think having a brewery that's named after you, Troegs,
right,
Yuengling, I think is really hard to do, but it's very cool once you get. I mean, I have no idea what the Troegs plan is. I mean, they're still independent. The whole thing is independently owned.
Yeah.
Like once you can get past like the first generation, I think that's like the coolest thing ever. Where it's
I mean, you think about it, like little old Pennsylvania here, but like you look at these lists of the top craft brewers in the country, and we got like 3 or 4 in the top 10 there.
Yeah, and in the top 50, there's still a bunch of them. Like there's also a lot of large regional breweries in mixed in here as well.
Yeah, and so walking in Troegs, I mean, I remember walking into the little tasting room in Harrisburg and what that was like. If you wanted food, you had to buy the Salisbury steak that was done in the toaster oven. To where it is now, you walk in there and it's this bustling, huge tap room with incredible beers.
Yeah, so I mean, what I've learned, talking to you guys, like my girlfriend's a photographer. It's like photography, video production work is like it's like 10% the filming and the production and all the editing, and then you're putting it all together. I was under the assumption that most of the work was filming and taking pictures. Like what?
Yeah, like why is this taking so long?
Exactly. So like, what was the timeline like? I mean, were you filming and editing as you were going, or like you guys just kind of went around on like this like marathon tour of filming all across the state and then coming back and putting it together?
So a little bit of both. I mean, we got the bulk of it shot before we started editing because we wanted to see where that story was going. But once we kind of figured out that narrative, my business partner Doug Metz is an incredible editor and kind of found that thread.
Yeah.
And so then we all right, well, we can grab some more stories that fit into this part of the film, or that sort of thing. Now, when we do the series, if you've seen the series, episodes are kind of broken down into either topics. So like we did one on, I have a Forest and Maine right here with me. We did one on can art. So, we talked a bunch of artists, and Forest Maine has killer can art. So we talked to them about that. We also did one on Saisons and also talked to Forest and Maine on that. So sometimes we double dip, when we go shoot somewhere, we're like, all right, you'd be great for this episode and this episode. Let me get a few quotes from different things. So that's one approach. We kind of have topics in mind. Other approaches are like, all right, here's a clear story on just this brewery because they're doing something a little different. We went down to Gettysburg, and there's a brewery there that supposedly has ghosts. And so we're like, all right, great Halloween episode. Battlefield Brew Works shot some stuff with them about the brewery, but then we had their bartender tell us like all her ghost stories, and so that turned out to be a cool episode. But that was like a self-contained, and we knew that's kind of what we were going for there.
Yeah, we actually we had Dan from Forest and Maine on yesterday.
Oh, cool.
And he was saying the original house that they had, was supposedly haunted.
Okay.
And they brought in a ghost hunter that was like pointing out where the spirits, and they said there was a troll that lived in the basement.
Well, it's funny, once you do one story like on any topic, everybody comes out of the woodwork and like, oh, we should have been in that episode too. We have ghosts at our place, or we have a great saison at our place, and I'm like, all right, but like we're just one team. We're
Yeah.
doing, so you can't include everything. You do the best you can to tell the story and give a little sampling.
Sick of your POS system being a POS? POS Specialists, powered by Heartland, have been the experts in cutting-edge POS technology for over 20 years. But they're not scriptwriters, so they let AI write their script. Thirsty for a delicious deal? Feast your eyes on our tastefully crafted point-of-sale system. From order up to cash out, this POS is the coriander spice your brewery needs. It'll have you saying, Prost. Yikes. See? That's why they have a 24/7 live phone support, not chatbots. Their experienced project managers will program your POS, train your staff, so you can just focus on the beer and not worry about the AI. Ask about their free processing options, handhelds, and online ordering. Email kevin@posspecialists.com. Mention BrewedAt and get $500 off your install. Email kevin@posspecialists.com.
So for GK Visual, you guys, I'm guessing you probably travel outside of PA a little bit.
We do, yeah.
Has there ever been any episodes without PA breweries?
There hasn't been, just mainly because our funding has come from Pennsylvania-based funding sources. I mean, if somebody wants to pay us to do port in New Jersey or whatever, I'm all game. But when we travel, we still are hitting breweries all the time, just because everywhere you go, you get a little taste of that region and that area. And I'll tell you what, I mean, you guys being in Philly know, just traveling across the border in New Jersey, how different the laws are and how we feel like we have it bad, and then you go over there and you're like, oh my gosh, how are you guys doing this? So
yeah, we just had Eric on, who was
from the guild.
Yeah,
okay,
from the guild.
Yeah,
he just broke down all of the different laws and what they're working on.
That was, I mean, that episode, if you haven't listened to it, you should go back and listen. I think people see it like, oh, the lobbyist for Pennsylvania, it sounds very boring. Like, his job is to talk professionally. Like, it was a great episode. Should go back and listen to that. But, I mean, you talk about, like, breweries are different everywhere, and we talked about this a little bit before we started rolling. Like, we are primarily focused on Philadelphia breweries, and, like, yes, every brewery in Philadelphia has their own spin on it, like, but there's a lot of things that are similar in a lot of the breweries here, and I'm sure that, in Harrisburg, it's a lot different. And then, I mean, you've been to every corner of the state with Port and PA. Yeah. What would you say is kind of like the biggest differences that you're seeing? Are there regional differences, or are there like certain clumps?
So if you would ask me maybe 5 years ago, what's the best beer city in the state, or the best, I'd say Pittsburgh. I mean, Pittsburgh had so many breweries even back then. Now it's almost like overkill. You can't hit them all. And if you would ask me about Philadelphia, I would have said this is a Philadelphia town, not necessarily a brewery town.
Yeah.
I mean, it has the history of brewing in this town, but now that's changed. But like back then, like you had the beer bars, you had like Monks and everything in between.
Standard Tap. It was
Standard Tap.
It was exactly what you're saying, beer city, but not a brewery city.
Right. But now that's changing. I mean, now I just was at two locals today. I mean, what a
They're
cool.
so hot.
Yeah. So you have everything. I had friends at Fermentary Farm. I mean, you guys have a vast variety of beer and brewing styles, from Human Robot to we're drinking Forest of Maine, like Yards. You got it. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
Here. In the middle of the state, it's kind of cool now. You know how every little Main Street and stuff had a coffee shop, and that was kind of the gathering space. But now we're seeing breweries become that gathering space and that community. Yeah.
And I think, by the way, I mean, you went to Penn State. State College was, I mean, they have autos, but they were seriously lacking.
100%. Yeah. You go to State College, a completely different situation now.
Yeah.
They're I mean, we'll be after the fact probably when this comes out, but they're having a huge beer festival on the field at Beaver Stadium this weekend.
Cool.
And that was like, that would have never been the thing. Now, back in the day, there was a huge brew expo in State College that was pretty epic, but it wasn't all local breweries. It was like, international stuff and all kinds of things. But now we're so many awesome breweries in the state.
Yeah, and what's the brewery right downtown?
Anti-Fragile.
Yeah, Anti-Fragile. They're like right in actual town.
And they're actually working. They're pretty big on organizing this big beer festival.
That's cool. I mean, they when they opened up downtown, because there have been a couple beer bars in that area that just they didn't survive because it's a college town. Like people don't have money to spend.
And I don't know
on
how
this
they're
stuff.
surviving where they're at. I mean,
Maybe it's because they're actually producing it, so they're cutting out some
Yeah,
of
it
those
could be.
margins. But their marketing has been very cool. Like even in Philadelphia, I'm seeing a lot of stuff that they're doing, and like they're very involved with everything.
But yeah, you guys asked what it's like across the state. It's pretty similar, depending where you go. I mean, that's the beauty of breweries, that you kind of know what you're getting into, with some exceptions here and there.
Yeah.
You know?
What are some of your favorite styles? I know you said you drink anything, but is there anything that pops out to you, or like when you started drinking?
Yeah, I mean,
That
my
changed.
first craft beer was a Sam Adams cherry wheat in the back of like buddy's car, when I was younger,
about right.
and I'm like, wow, this is crazy. I don't know if I can drink this thing, And looking back on that, I'm like, wow, this thing's like the easiest thing to drink, So styles now, though, it's probably annoying to bartenders when I walk in. I said, what do you recommend? And they're like, well, what do you like? I said, I like everything. They just tell me what is good. I want to taste what they're proud of. I want to taste what that brewer is like. All right, this is my jam. This is what I do the best. I want to try that. Love
philosophy a little bit for sure.
Yeah,
too.
walk in, listen to bartenders. They're the salespeople for the brewery.
Yeah.
Listen to what they have to say. It's just like craft beer. You're supposed to be exploring everything. Like, just go in and with an open mind and drink what they're good at.
Now, I'm with you because I listen to the podcast a little bit. I'm not a huge fan of flights because I want to get to know that beer.
Exactly.
I want to know what that beer tastes like from the first few sips all the way down to the bottom.
Yeah, I don't need a
flight-
sea-level version of the beer.
Yeah, I feel like a flight kind of wrecks my palate, and I'm like, by the end, I'm like, I don't know.
And I'm not getting like a palette of like their IPAs. If when people get flights, they're like one sour, one lager, one porter, and one IPA, and like you can't drink like those three beers in a row and like have any idea to be able to taste like the last two beers. Like your palate is all over.
Now
the
you're
place.
a flight guy though, right?
I am.
He's
I
a Gen
like-
Zer.
That is why. And I just recently saw a report from like Talia on LinkedIn, essentially saying they understand the critiques of the flight and how it actually works with the beer palate, but flights are monetary, like
The margins are higher.
much
and
higher, and people in our age and demographic really enjoy flights.
You can take a picture
And
of it, but
I mean, I'm with you on like there are some breweries that I will go to. I'm like they have crazy things. I'm like I do want to try a little bit of that, and some,
a lot of the
some,
barrel aged places I might do that. 'Cause
Okay,
it's
and
just like,
I was just gonna say pastry stouts. I can't even drink a full beer of that anyway.
Yeah.
So I only want a little of that to try. I'm not gonna, or I might do a few beers and I'm like, can I just have a taster of this one and this one? Because I don't want a full pint of a Oreo cookie cupcake stout. That's not my thing.
yeah. So I mean, you guys are going to these places. Like, is that a full day shoot or a couple of days? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so it works a couple different ways. I mean, we're going to have an episode coming out, hopefully sometime this summer, that's taken over a year to put together.
one episode.
It may be one or two. We're not
Okay.
sure how it's going to break apart, but it's on these beer running clubs across
Okay,
the
very
state.
cool.
Yeah,
So,
that's a
I mean,
cool one.
Philadelphia here. the
Fishtown Beer Runners.
Fishtown Beer Runners. And I'm glad we're getting to talk about this with the passing of David April.
Yeah.
He was so gracious to us and had us down, and we have a great interview with him, but we haven't been able to release it yet. And he passed away a few months after we shot that. So that one's really special to me, and we want to make sure we do that justice when it comes out. But we got to talk to all these other beer running clubs that were kind of offshoots of the Fishtown Beer Runners. And I'll just say here, if you don't know anything about what we're talking about, just go on YouTube and look up the Fishtown Beer Runners. There's a great documentary on them on YouTube that we didn't do, but it's really well done. But anyway, we got to talk to all these groups that grew out of this, and so it's combining running with breweries and all these people that have found shared interest. You have runners that take things too seriously who needed to chill out a little bit and have a beer, and then you have beer drinkers who probably could stand to run a couple miles coming together, and they find common interest. And so
Balance.
I was the one elected to kind of run with all these groups. I ran with each one of these, and
Are you running? I guess you own a gym. You probably pretty fit.
I would not consider myself a serious runner, but I could run a few miles, if need be here and there. So we did it, in Pittsburgh and Harrisburg and Philly and Gettysburg. So these will be a culmination of all these stories together. So it's taken a while to kind of sift that one through. So back to your original question, how long does it take? I mean, something like that's going to be an over a year process.
Yeah, you're not just at an individual place.
Other times it might just be an hour or two at a single location if it's a pretty easy thing to shoot.
Yeah, the port in PA, I was kind of blown away. It was like it was very smooth the entire thing, but you hit most players in the game in Pennsylvania. It was like so many different people. So you're not filming that at a studio that they're coming to you. You're going to all those different places and filming.
Yeah. We try not to make anybody too long-winded and try not to exclude anybody. So it's a balancing act, right, of trying to get as many voices in there as you can without overdoing it, but also not giving somebody the mic for too long.
Yeah, people are drinking too much to give them the hot mic too long, start saying crazy stuff.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably where I'm at right now. I don't know, but
nah, I think you're good so far.
All right.
What was the process of then getting that movie into like local theaters across the
state? That's an interesting process. That was kind of a first for us too, and we made some dumb mistakes there, but it was fun in the same sense. Once you put the film out, what do you do with it? Who's going to watch it? Do we just throw it up on YouTube right away, or what do you do? So we started entering it into film festivals, and we got a lot of play with that. I mean, I was going all over the place with this film. We won a bunch of awards for it. We were in New Jersey, won Best Documentary. We were shown in Colorado. We were shown in Orlando, Florida. I forget how many. Maryland, all over the place. So that was fun. A lot of eyes got to see. I remember going down to Florida to watch the film play for a few people, because at a film festival, there's so many films shown. You're always curious to see who walks in there. And, I'm sitting there with a Yuengling in Orlando, Florida, watching my film with Dick Yuengling on the screen. It's kind of a cool thing. Cool. And I went to film school down there then, too, after Penn State. So that was kind of a cool full circle. But, I remember being in New Jersey watching the film, and it was at a bar, and most of the people in there weren't drinking beer. They were drinking cocktails and wine and stuff like that. And I remember seeing one guy who had been drinking wine all night. He left, and I thought, well, I lost him. Comes back with a beer in his hand. I said, all right. So it had an impact, and it's kind of fun to see how people respond to the film in those ways. But so we did the film festival circuit. After that, it did get on Amazon for a while. It was on Amazon for a while. We worked with a group there that kind of screwed us over and taking the rights to it and the money for it and stuff. So lesson learned. So our fireback was, well, let's just put it on YouTube and make it free for everybody. And so that's what we did. And so it lives there. I think somebody even pirated the video. And so it lives on there multiple times because somebody else is getting views on it too. And it's just it's a Wild West. But, the point wasn't to get, rich off of it. I don't think anybody really does at this level. But to get the word out about craft beer in Pennsylvania.
It was cool. Before I was I was brewing at the time, but I wasn't involved in any of this. And I went to the theaters, saw it with my parents, and it perfectly showed, we talked about the time capsule, what craft beer in Pennsylvania was like at that specific time. And it's much different than it is now, but it is very intriguing. And it's you perfectly get the picture of what's going on, where it came from. It's
how do you think it's different from then? I'm curious from a brewer standpoint what you think.
It's almost it was coming out of kind of the tail end of when brews were very hot. You had Victory and Troegs and Yard, some of these people that kind of exploded and got to the next level where they're regional breweries, where now it's almost it's hard to New Trail has jumped it, but it's hard to jump up in between the different layers now. And I think that kind of a lot of people are just staying in where they're at. If you are a regional brewery, you're different. Staying in the regional brewery, selling to a couple different states. If you're a small local brewery, you're kind of just doing that. If you're a large brewery, you're selling all over the country. And the beer and the marketing is very different. Where I think it was a little bit more dynamic back then. but then also, I mean, you touched on the raw materials, like the Deer Creek. I think it took a while. It was almost like the slow burn, like craft beer got big, and now raw materials are almost doing the same thing, where like, you know, they are then kind of like, even consumers are like learning who Yakima Chief, they're learning Deer Creek. It's like they're not just, they're more intelligent now, they're more informed.
That's a great way.
Yeah, I mean, because of documentaries like this, I mean, it was like so informative, and like the average craft beer fan has a much better understanding of what's going on in the industry. It's not just people in the industry.
We actually did a short little series with Deer Creek on the malt industry in Pennsylvania, and actually talked to some farmers too, because we forget how far down this trickle is with industries involved in brewing. And so we talked to the farmers, and we get some honest opinions from, you know, it's really tough to grow hops in Pennsylvania. It's really tough to go malt in Pennsylvania that's going to be sustainable for the amount of demand for it. It's very expensive for brewers to buy all Pennsylvania grains. I think the consumer's like, oh, I want this all to be local. Well, that's great. Do you want to spend $12 a beer? You know, it's tough.
No, and I think there's a place for Deer Creek. You know, but to think that Deer Creek is going to become, you know, the next Breeze is like, it's not realistic. Like, from a production standpoint, the malt that you're looking to bring in, especially base malt, is like, you need consistency is the key. You know, you're trying to eliminate variables, and like Deer Creek makes high quality malt.
That's it. It's a high quality product.
It's high quality.
Are you willing to spend the money on a high
quality product?
Yeah.
It's high quality, but you need a lot of base malt to make beer, and it's just like, for a lot of people, you just need, even if it's like doesn't have as much depth of flavor, you just need more volume, and it doesn't make sense for a lot of people. I mean, it makes perfect sense if the consumer is willing to pay a lot more money for their beer. So, you know, vote with your dollars if you want more of that.
And there's so much more competition now, not just with beer, but all these other craft spirits and things that have entered the market, the ready-to-drinks, and, you know, all these are chipping away at beer's, you know, market.
Does GK Visual do any of that? I mean, are you guys just primarily beer focused, or are you guys doing like kind of all?
Yeah, so Port and PA has been beer focused for a couple of reasons. The main being, you know, honestly, that's where the dollars have been for us to be able to produce it. If you know, the craft distilling industry came up and said, hey, we want to be included in this, we'd love to talk to them too. We love telling people stories that have a story to tell, right? So there are winemakers, there's mead makers. We have all this in the state, all doing incredible things here. So, but it is tough to do this and pay a staff and you know, you need a budget to do it. Right? But GK Visual itself does work with a lot of companies and industries, and we do have a couple clients outside of the beer industry, but still in the beverage industry. So we do a whiskey called SB House. We do their social media, and actually Bottled here in Philadelphia carries them.
Cool.
They're based out of Bedford, Pennsylvania, but they source a lot of great product from Kentucky and Indiana, and have a really.
And I imagine their stories are very similar to kind of the craft beer. As much as you're not making stories about that, I imagine, you know, it's a lot of, you know, entrepreneurs, a lot of startups.
Exactly it. Yeah, a lot of startups, a lot of entrepreneurs. Hidden Still and Hershey, you know, we've done some work with them. They're actually we got them worked into an episode recently with barrel aged beers. A lot of breweries have been using some Hidden Still barrels to age their beers, and so that was one way to bring in another industry into that.
Nice. Like, where do you see? I mean, you've been documenting this for the past 8 years.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think is? I mean, not just the future of craft beer in Pennsylvania, but like, you know, I'm sure when Port and PA came out, you know, like, Instagram was not what it is today.
Sure.
And a lot of this marketing has changed. Like, where do you see kind of like your role in all of this?
Yeah, our role has definitely shifted. I mean, we've definitely have been trying to work with some breweries. We do actually run some Instagram and social media for some breweries.
Yeah.
So that's been a nice thing to come out of our relationships with the brewers that we've been introduced to. But money's tight. I mean, most breweries do not have a big marketing budget, and so it's tough for them to spend money on. I mean, you guys know it, on anything outside of getting beer onto the
Things
shelf
cost money.
or across the
Yeah.
bar, so, and we're a small business as well, so we totally understand that. And it's, I hate to say it, but we see a lot of people we've done stories on close shop. It happens. The industry is getting pretty saturated. You go to beer festivals now, and they're maybe not as well attended as they used to be, or it's shifting in the direction that it's going. By no means am I gloom and doom here. I mean, I think Pennsylvania's got a thriving beer industry and will continue to be so, but the younger drinkers aren't as familiar with the beer industry, and there's a lot of people vying for their attention. And so unless we do a good job of educating and talking about what's being made here locally versus, a Truly or,
and
something like that.
that dips into exactly what at least we're trying to build in that
Yeah.
sense of there are a lot of large-scale type of media companies. I mean, obviously, I always attribute to Barstool as an example, but they have all these higher-level sort of partnerships
Sure.
with big beverage brands. And obviously, from a craft brand perspective, that's not something you can do with a large company, but that's what we're looking to kind of rally the troops.
Yeah.
And coming from this Gen Z perspective, I don't think it's, my personal take is, I don't think the beer industry is pushing enough to get in front of this audience. And then you can go back and you totally can see, like, yes, marketing is tight, but how much tighter is it going to be in 5 years when product isn't being moved as much because the investment hasn't been within this next generation that we're trying to kind of create.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to it. It's a large puzzle in itself.
And for us, I mean, if somebody's listening this far into the podcast, they're on our side, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're preaching to the choir at this point. But we all get it. We get it that you go to a brewery not just for the beer, even though the beer is great, but you go to the brewery to meet your friends for trivia nights. You go there for live music. You go there to unwind after work for the day. It's not just, it's changed a little bit in the sense that, remember, like, how many lines would be around the block for some places on a can release?
Yeah.
And we don't see that anymore. And
Yeah.
and it's, I
The
think,
beer fest, it's a lot of things have changed, but it's like there's still people going.
yeah. So I think the shift is a good one, that we're seeing it more towards the meeting space, the local sense of community, as versus of somebody putting out their lawn chair to hold their
Yeah, it's a
place in
destination
line
bar.
for
It's
a
like it's
can.
not like you're just going to a bar. You're going there. You're going to the brewery specifically.
Yeah, and you're seeking out more than just the beer, in my mind. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, you guys know it. Every time a local charity or nonprofit needs a donation, they often go to their local brewery. And
Yeah.
they often give it, right? They're constantly giving to their community. They're constantly giving back. You don't see Barstool or
No.
these big corporations doing the same level of commitment
Of
to
localized,
local charities.
specific things.
We did a whole episode on, like, dogs at breweries, but a part of that was, like, these adoption agencies going into a brewery and having their dogs there that people can meet. So many fundraisers at breweries. Yoga. My wife and I own a gym in Harrisburg called Burn 30, or in Camp Hill there, and we partner with Zeroday in Harrisburg, that we have one of our instructors go over and lead a yoga class there, and then everybody gets a free beer afterwards, and that happens a lot across the board. There's just so much community involvement that you're not seeing anywhere else. You're not going to your local restaurant and having a yoga day.
Yeah, and I think we've had Meredith, but like what's his name, Kenwood. We had Matt on, and he's coming from like a very big beer perspective, like where there's very niche thing that he's trying to do, where like he's putting on these like large scale events that wants to like create this experience, like sporting events and stuff, which like there's a space for that, and like clearly Kenwood's doing great. There's a space for that, but there's also exactly what you're saying, like these niche things, like the whole brewing industry, like there was kind of this missing piece where like these charities, like these breweries didn't have access to like do these large scale events, but they could market on a smaller scale by doing like partnering, like dog
It's
adoption
everything.
agencies
It's
and stuff.
comedy shows.
And it's become the culture of craft beer now.
Yeah, it's all over the place. I mean, Love City, what they do, like a little roller skate circus
Yeah.
thing. Like you're not finding this other places. These breweries it's incredible.
Bud Light is not like doing a roller derby thing like
Yeah.
at one single
and it's either free or really cheap to go in and have a couple beers and enjoy something that's within the community and a great time.
Yeah.
We also have so many great stories of people meeting each other at breweries. We have a local brewery near us called Haymauer, and like I was just looking at their Facebook recently, and they were at a wedding this past weekend with two people that met there and got married, and another two people that were in attendance at that wedding are getting married because they met at the brewery, and there's another one that just got engaged at the brewery. So it's like once you have a common ground of beer and you're local, I mean, right away you have a connection with somebody else sitting at the bar, right?
I mean, you talk about like the early days of Brewed in the Berg. Is that kind of like what GK Visual was? Like, is everyone at GK Visual? Is it like a very craft beer? I mean, because you guys have
I mean,
standard. You have to be in a craft beer.
It's funny when it happens to be. It's not like it's on your resume what kind of beer you like or anything like that. But our whole crew loves beer. We love just like this, sitting around having beer, talking face to face with people, sharing stories, and we all, just like I'm sure you guys know, if you walk into a bar with your buddies, you know what they're going to be ordering, who might be the one ending up with a story at the end of the night because they're a little crazy. Yep. Who might be the one to pass out first. Like, you just know, right? And so I think it's brought our team together a lot more because we've shared these drinking stories together. And
you're all over the state. It's like an adventure.
And I can tell you, like, name a city. I can tell you a drinking story from that city with our team, and that's fun, right? That's a shared experience. And I'm sure everybody can have the same thing, like being in a bar with like, oh man, I remember being at that bar with so and so. Like, you got a story, right? And so that's kind of hopefully the stories stop at the bar, and it's not oh man, he became an alcoholic after that night. But
No, I think Pennsylvania specifically for craft beer, there's a lot of small towns in Pennsylvania, and even like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh are giant cities, but they have a small town feel, a lot of it. And you've been all over the state, and you're seeing like it just naturally goes together, these craft breweries in the small towns.
Well, you raise kind of a great point there, is that you see a lot of these downtown areas that are kind of desolate and don't have much going on, and then you see a brewery go in, right? And then, oh my gosh, then there's like the coffee shop opens up, and this restaurant opens up, and then this bank comes in, and boom, 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 and they kind of spread out across the main street from there. You look at outside of State College at Elk Creek, right, in Millheim. They popped in there, and then all of a sudden there's an art gallery across the street, and all of a sudden there's like a laundromat, and like all these things started popping up that weren't there before, and you see that all across the state.
It's the perfect combination of like nightlife and production space. It's restaurants have a fail rate of like 95% in the first 3 years. Breweries have a fail rate of 50% in the first 3 years. So it's like you're bringing people in from out of town, but then also, like, there's not as much risk of the places going out of business. It's stable production jobs, it's not just, service industry jobs.
And then, the next thing is, right, you have one brewery, and you're like, well, I really hope for a second one because they're going to do better together. Like Definitely. You said, people are going to want to travel to that town then and try both breweries, or 3 or 4 or 5.
Yeah, you had interviewed somebody in Indiana, Pennsylvania, and they were talking about that, where they had, there's one brewery there. It's an hour outside of Pittsburgh, and, like, people might be compelled to, like, travel 1 hour to go to a brewery. But if there's 2 or 3 breweries, it makes it a lot easier to convince yourself or your friends that, like, hey, we should go drive an hour to go visit these couple breweries, not just this one place.
Yeah, and what other industry do you have that, right? So where you have a pizza shop open on one corner and another pizza shop open a corner away, they're not going to be too happy about it. But you have that with breweries, and they love it because, boom, they're helping bring traffic to each other.
Yeah, it's like it's small business, and like you talking about like your funding's coming from Brewers of Pennsylvania, and just like the the state realizes that, you know, these small businesses, when they team up, you know, even though they're individual entities, you know, it makes like stronger community together.
Yeah, beer tourism's a real thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we did an episode where we took my family up to the Poconos, and we shot an episode of my family enjoying Poconos, and it wasn't just the breweries. It was like the little amusement park. It was the hiking and
Yep.
the restaurants and all that sort of thing. But like a beercation is a real thing, and until
I mean,
people,
Asheville has now become like
absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Disney World for breweries.
Yeah, you need to embrace it, and the more you do, the more everybody's going to do well.
Yeah, it's very cool. I think, you know, Evan, I mean, we talked about it before this, like you're almost like a more mature company than BrewedAt, but it's like very similar. Like,
You can say I'm old. That's fine.
No.
That's all right, guys.
I guess, I mean, advice for us, I mean, you guys have been doing it, like, you guys are a player in the game. Like, what do you think, I mean, you've established yourself, like, as a kind of like the Pennsylvania beer documentary.
I appreciate
people.
that. Yeah. I don't know. Advice to somebody else doing this. I mean, it's a labor of love. You know, you gotta really love it. It's not like we've found that it's created so many great relationships that so many people I would call great friends now that I would have never known before we started down this path. So that's the most valuable thing I think I've gotten out of it, are these relationships that will continue for life. As outside of that, you know, we've gotten work through GK Visual to other industries because of the work we've done here. And I think that's was our main purpose behind this, is like, hey, we feel like we're great storytellers. We're going to put this out into the market, into the world, and say, hey, check this out. Here's what we can do. If you feel like we can tell a good story here, I bet we can tell a good story in your industry as well, or with your business. And so I think that's kind of been our goal, and I think it's doing that. I appreciate you guys having me on to help spread the word of that same story, but people starting out doing the same thing. I mean, continue doing what you love, and see what avenues it takes. You know, don't lock yourself into, all right, this is exactly what we're doing. We're not going to look over here. You know, who knows what can become of things.
Yeah, I guess the best way to make a friend is sit down and have a beer with them.
That's exactly right. That's a great way. Yeah, that should be a T-shirt, right?
Yeah.
It could be a Port PA t-shirt.
There you go. Yeah.
Your merch is great, by the way.
Oh,
Just
thanks.
had to-
Yeah.
just
You know
have to
what?
shout that out.
So that's I appreciate you saying that. We just won one of those Kresge awards for our merch line, so we thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice, expanding now your.
Yeah, I'll give a little plug for
Clothing
that. Go to
company.
portandpa.com and check out the store. There's tons of cool shirts and different things, and we I think we enjoy that sometimes more than producing the show itself. It's been fun to
That's
come
what
up with shirts.
Jake from Human Robot says. He said he got into this to just be a t-shirt designer.
I know. Every time I see Human Robot shirts, I'm like, oh man, that's another killer one. Yeah.
Yeah, they're making some great stuff. I guess if you haven't checked it out, checked in Poured in Pennsylvania, right? The documentary on YouTube.
Yeah.
It'll agree. If you haven't seen it, it's like a great overview of exactly where, you know, Pennsylvania craft beer was in 2018. You know, things have changed, but it's like we're not where we're at today without those people that were in that documentary.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
you talk
so
to everybody.
You have that film that tells that story, and then we've continued on with over 50 episodes of
Yeah,
Poured in PA.
just marching down the line. So,
Yeah.
very
I think
cool.
one of the funniest one I saw was some love for Punch Buggy. We love Punch Buggy.
Yeah, those guys are great.
But there was one clip where I think they used to be an old porn studio. I just saw that.
I think they laugh about it now, but like when he did it, he's like, "Oh, can you guys cut that out?" I'm sure we should put that in. I'm like, "Yeah, we'll cut it out. We'll see." Yeah.
Very
The other thing is, people were like, "Can I swear in this?" I'm like, swear away. It's going on YouTube, man. Do whatever you want.
Very funny. Cool. I guess, do we have anything you guys want to plug?
Not right now.
Cool. So I guess Poured in PA online.
Yeah,
and,
you get Poured in PA, Instagram, Facebook. I don't know if anybody does Twitter anymore. I think we're on there. I don't think we touch it. But YouTube is the big thing. The biggest help you can give us is subscribe to the show. You'll know when new episodes come out. Subscribers help us, and then buy a T-shirt or something, or even just come say hi at a beer festival. And
yeah, I think everyone knows who you are, and it's just like taking the step of actually it's literally subscribing to you. It's not that hard.
Yeah, exactly.
So, let's do that. And I'm looking forward to the beer runners coming out.
Yeah, me too. I think that's going to be really cool.
The same thing. I
special
think
episode.
a lot of people. The beer runners T-shirts you see them at the bars, but like I don't know the history of the beer runners. I think that'll be very cool to see.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess that's the BrewedAt podcast, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.